Good morning. Welcome to the Three Rivers podcast for Wednesday, September 4th. I am your host, Ed Troop. Glad you could join us here on Oneberg, on our Oneberg Facebook page, Oneberg YouTube, and on our Spotify channel. Well, the NFL season is about 36 hours away. Hard to believe, but here we are on the eve of the start of the 2024 NFL season. And joining me to discuss that and the Pittsburgh Steelers in their 2024 season, which will begin this Sunday in Atlanta against the Falcons at 1 o'clock, is Paul Alexander, our good friend from KDKA Radio and the Fan 93.7. Good morning, Paul. Welcome back into the podcast.
Ed, thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing well, my friend. Paul, again, 36 hours away from the Thursday night matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champs, hosting the Ravens on opening night, just 36 hours away. Hard to believe, but here we go, the start of another NFL season.
Yeah, I'm glad the weather kind of cooperated too. We've gotten a little taste of some crispness in the air, some fall feelings, and of course, pumpkin spice is out and around. I've seen some Halloween decorations. So, all of those signs are telling us one thing: football is here.
You're a pumpkin spice guy?
No, I'm not. Not at all. I don't even like pumpkin pie, so no, I'm not a pumpkin guy.
I like a little pumpkin spice in my Dunkin' Donuts coffee or my Starbucks every once in a while, just to kind of give me that fall type of taste. You know what I mean?
I will say that Iron City makes a pumpkin beer that's out of this world.
Well, now you're talking, right? Now
World.
Now you got the attention of the audience when you start talking about different beer flavors and fall flavors. That's for sure. Good stuff. Hey, Paul, let's talk about the big news in Steeler Nation this morning. Steeler fans waking up to some good news. Cam Hayward signed late yesterday, Tuesday evening, to a 3-year extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think in the 40 to 45 million ballpark for the next 3 years. The Steelers bring Cam Hayward back. Of course, this was a big subject in the offseason, whether they would extend him or let him walk at the end of the season. But now he is under a new deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cam Hayward will retire a Steeler.
Yeah, and if you looked at it closely, it was a no-risk deal by the Steelers. That $45 million, 16's guaranteed. So you know what Cam was due this year? $16 million. So they've guaranteed the $16 million that he was going to get this year. I think from Cam's perspective and the agent's perspective, if you look closely, this is just kind of window dressing. They didn't give in to anything extended in terms of guaranteed money, but it looks good. It looks good for everybody, feels good for everybody. 35-year-old defensive lineman. One thing I always admired about the Patriots is their ruthless negotiations with players. They only negotiated, for what you're going to do, not what you have done. And when you start signing players, because they were so loyal, they did so much. That's not how the NFL works. That's why you have a draft every year. That's why you have free agency. That's why you have all the things that allow the owners to continue to refresh and refuel the roster. As much as I love Cam, and I do, I saw him beat my Nittany Lions with one arm way back in his college days at Ohio State. I have so much respect for him on and off the field. But this is a business. And the Steelers haven't won a freaking playoff game in 7 years. Doing emotional signings, which I think Cam has plenty left. I mean, for 1 year. But 3 years? He's going to be a dominant defensive lineman at 38? No one is. I mean, Father Time's undefeated. But as far as how it comes across, and I think that Cam is such a great leader in that locker room, I'm very happy that this happened. But the Steelers did not take 1 ounce of risk in this deal, which I think needs to be applauded for Omar and his group.
Yeah, it's hard to think that Cam Hayward, as you said, at the end of this contract would be 38, that he's going to play out this entire 3-year deal that he has on the table. I agree with you. He gets the guaranteed money. That's a win for him and for the Steelers organization. Again, hard to believe that he will play those full 3 years in this contract. Definitely this year, maybe next year. But, beyond that, we'll have to wait and see. Paul, let's talk a little bit about Russell Wilson in the quarterback position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wilson wins the job. No surprise there, beating out Fields in camp in the preseason, even though Fields kind of outplayed Wilson. Neither of them were spectacular in the preseason, the looks that they got, but Fields definitely got more looks than Wilson and was able to do more, especially with his legs being mobile on the ground. But Wilson is your starting quarterback this Sunday in Atlanta. How do you think this is going to go with Russell Wilson as the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback?
I'm just going to be completely honest. I have never had less of a feel for a team in all the many, many years. I think my first trip to Latrobe as a reporter was 1983. And you always had a pretty good idea and a pretty good feel for what the Steelers were going to be like. And this season, I have no clue. Russell was anointed the starter the day he signed. There was no tryout. There was no. I mean, he didn't win the job. He was given the job. Let's be honest, just like Trubisky was back. And if Steeler fans haven't learned about the complete meaninglessness of the preseason 2 years ago in Kenny Pickett, he was flawless. He was perfect. Okay, what did that mean in the grand scheme of things? He's not even he's not even the backup in Philadelphia right now. So September baseball, preseason football, probably the most meaningless things in all of sports. Guys that hit 5 home runs in September, you're all excited about them to come back in April, and we have this guy, and he's so good. Why isn't he hitting? Because no one cares. When you're out of it in August, what does it mean what you do in September? So now that the preseason is just 3 games, and no one's even figured out how to actually script that. How many, plays do the starters get? What do we do here? What do we do there? Is it the second game that matters? Third? We're going to play, an 18-game season real soon. And there'll be 2 preseason games, so they'll even be less meaningful. So long story short, I don't have a clue. I know Wilson was paid $40 million to go away. That's never a guy I get real excited about. Now, hopefully Sean Payton was completely wrong in that assessment, but for Denver to pay $40 million for you not to play for me, I'm not exactly jumping up and down. Now, Russell Wilson, vintage in Seattle, yeah, I'll take that guy. Love that guy. I don't know if that guy's still in there. I don't know. Justin Fields, one thing I did want to see in the preseason was him to stand in the pocket. That guy's covered. Oh, this guy, progressions and make a throw. Didn't see it. He's never done it. He's not an accurate passer. He can fly. I don't want my quarterback running. How many playoff games has Lamar Jackson won? And he can actually throw it a little bit. And no one, including Justin Fields, can run like him. That doesn't really work in the NFL. Now, when protection breaks down, guys are covered, and you have the ability to run for a first down, I love you. I love everything about you. I don't want a running quarterback. We saw it, and again, this is why this thing is so flawed to me, Ed. They finally put a quarterback in that could step up into the pocket and throw the ball downfield. Do you see how that offense looked? Oh, that's right. That was Mason Rudolph, the guy that was on that roster and on that bench for 5 years that Mike Tomlin never even considered. So his evaluation of quarterbacks, he brought in Mitch Trubisky with great fanfare and great hope. Drafted Kenny Pickett, 20 overall. As far as his credibility with me, knowing and understanding quarterbacks, no, 0. He gets a 0. He had Mason Rudolph on that bench the whole time and didn't even give him a look, didn't give him a sniff, forced to play him. Oh, my God, this kid can play. He's a player. Then they don't even give him a chance after he proves it. So, again, I'm not overly excited about the quarterback room of your Pittsburgh Steelers for obvious reasons.
Yeah, you think about that quarterback room the last, really 4 or 5 years. The last couple of years at Ben, were not great. He was winding down his career. He was not very effective. Wasn't the same Ben that we saw throughout most of his career. And then you mentioned it. They bring in Trubisky. They tried Kenny Pickett in there. And it turns out Mason Rudolph is the best quarterback, including Ben in his last couple of years that was on that team the last few years and only got a look the second half of last season. He's gone. They bring in Russell Wilson for a short-term solution, they're thinking, and maybe Justin Fields for a long-term solution. But here's the problem, Paul, that if let's say Fields comes in this season, takes over for Russell Wilson, is extremely effective, he's a free agent at the end of this year. The Steelers did not pick up that option in the offseason. Therefore, Fields could play himself out of here next year, even if he turns out to be the best quarterback.
Yeah, and another, and again, here we are on the verge of the NFL season. I want everyone to be excited. I'm excited. I want to be completely stunned and surprised with how good Wilson is or how good Fields is. That would make me so happy. Two quarterbacks over the last 3 years have the most losses in the NFL. That would be Fields and Wilson. Two quarterbacks have been sacked more than any other two quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. That's Fields and Wilson. So the offensive line, you've drafted two left tackles in the first round of the last 3 drafts, and they're not playing left tackle yet. What are we doing? I mean, seriously, what are we doing? We have Dan Moore as our starting left tackle as your Pittsburgh Steelers, and everyone agrees that he's not a very good left tackle. But no one has supplanted him yet because they've had some injury situations. I'm optimistic overall about how the line will be eventually. Boy, the start of the season doesn't look good for that offensive line. You have a rookie at center. Love the kid. I think he's going to be a 10-year starter and a great player. He's not going to start that way. You don't just come into the NFL as an offensive lineman and be dominant right away. No one's done that I can think of. Maybe Anthony Munoz, but I don't even know how he was as a rookie. I don't remember. But as always, I think we're going to have concerns about this Steeler offense. I love the running backs. I love that combination. The Arthur Smith offense with, the love of the tight end, Pat Freiermuth, who still doesn't have a new deal. We might hear something today or tomorrow. I don't know. And the defense, while it should be very good, they're 2 corners shy of being what I think they need to be in the 2024 NFL. I mean, they don't have proven cover guys really outside of Joey Porter Jr. I mean, you have Beanie Bishop, an undrafted free agent as your slot corner, and I think he's a great player, but he's also not going to be great right away. I mean, people need to be reminded of things all the time. There was a guy by the name of Troy Polamalu as a rookie, considered a bust. Why did they move up to draft him? What were they thinking? So you have to allow these guys to grow into their NFL legacy. It doesn't happen instantaneously.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Rookies very not on a regular basis come in as a starter week 1 and dominate for the entire season. There's a lot of growing pains, a lot of things they have to do to catch up. So, that the offensive line, the main offensive lineman that everybody talked about before he got hurt in training camp was the first-round draft pick, Troy Fautanu, that he was outplaying everyone, but now he's not even going to start this weekend. They're going to go back to Dan Moore because Fautanu not back to 100% health-wise. Broderick Jones struggled. You got a rookie at center. Of course, now you're banged up on the offensive line as well with Saul Lawler. Yeah, he's
probably the best offensive lineman.
Exactly. So a lot of questions up front, and they need that offensive line to play well because, as you said, Wilson and Fields both sacked a lot the last couple seasons. You said it; they led the NFL in that category and turnovers. So they need that production up front from their offensive line for pass protection and beyond. Paul, let's talk about the wide receiver room. George Pickens, of course, your main guy. Did the Steelers fell though? They didn't get Brandon Ayuk. They didn't have a backup plan, so now they're going to go with Van Jefferson as your number 2. They got Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller. Of course, they brought in this past preseason Roman Wilson, banged up. They're hopeful that he's going to come in, the wide receiver from Michigan, and make an impact this season. But beyond George Pickens, a lot of question marks at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and if the Brandon Ayuk deal was something they were counting on and they didn't have a plan B, that's a pretty solid failure, in my opinion. And you look at the track record of what the Niners do, they just play the waiting game. They don't blink, and everyone ends up signing with them. No one really leaves San Francisco. So Ayuk had the same offer 2.5 months ago. The one that he accepted was on the table for 2.5 months. So everyone that thought, and there were so many people, I don't know if they were led astray by the sources or whatever. I never thought Ayuk was coming here, and I never thought the Steelers were serious about paying a wide receiver $30 million a year or something around there. 28, 29 million a year for a wide receiver. I didn't think that was going to happen anyhow. Now, granted, they're not paying a quarterback right now, but you better leave some cap space to pay a guy because you're not going to win anything without one. So if these two guys aren't the quarterback that we hope they are, they're not. They're going to have to go get one. They're going to have to draft one again. So what's that? Another 5 years without a playoff win? What are we doing? I mean, I don't really know what's going on with the. This is not like an all-out win now. When Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin the third are your 2 and 3 wide receivers, and the the Deontay Johnson trade, that seems to be, and they didn't draft an awesome corner. They didn't trade for an awesome corner there. I mean, Jackson's a decent corner. He's not a shutdown corner. He's his better days are already gone. So maybe the Ayuk deal happens if they have Johnson to trade. A lot of speculation there. So it hasn't been anything to me but an interesting offseason. I don't think they secured any kind of power rating in the NFL. I don't think they secured a guaranteed trip to the playoffs with what they did in the offseason. But I will say this, it was extremely interesting.
Paul, the AFC North, arguably, or maybe not arguably, the best division in football going into the 2024 season. It's been very strong the last few years, especially if everybody stays healthy. Where do you see the Steelers finishing in this division this year? And talk about the Bengals, the Browns, and the Ravens, and what you think is going to happen with those teams here within this division this season.
Well, right now, I would pick them dead last. The quarterbacks, again, it's a quarterback league. I mean, that's why they make 50+ million. That's why Deshaun, Watson got whatever, the 250 million guaranteed. Now, he's the wild card. I mean, much like, Russell Wilson, I mean, he at one point was easily a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, the skills are not in question, but the transition to Cleveland no traction. I mean, it's kind of a mess. To me, that's the wild card. The Steelers could benefit if he never does work out in Cleveland, because that's a crippling contract if he never works out. And they had to restructure it already. He's still going to get every dime. I love when he agreed to restructure. He didn't give up a dime. I mean, when Ben would restructure, he didn't give up a dime. They just paid him in a lump sum. I mean, it's not even a give up of anything. I love Joe Burrow. If they get their receivers happy, which they're having a little trouble getting that done in Cincinnati right now. The ultimate divas in all of sports right now is the wide receiver position in the NFL. We may have one brewing here. Who knows? It could be a mess with Pickens if he's not getting the ball. And, you're going to get what you're going to get out of Baltimore. They're going to run it very effectively. If Lamar does figure it out a little bit in the pocket, they certainly are on the verge of being a Super Bowl contending team. And they always play great defense. But right now, with a complete question mark at quarterback for the Steelers, I have to put them last for the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to think that they're going to be competitive, near the top. I said all spring long and going into training camp, Paul, that the Steelers, if they were able to acquire a big number 2 receiver and they stay healthy, they could be in that division, maybe even in that Final Four divisional round conversation in the AFC. But I really felt that that's the piece of the puzzle that they really needed, and they still need, in my opinion, some depth in the secondary. You mentioned some of the guys back there as well. A corner to join, Dante Jackson and also Joey Porter Jr. Of course, Deshaun Elliott brings in at the safety position, opposite side of Mika Fitzpatrick. But if any of those guys get hurt, there's nothing behind them. You got Corey Tice, who hasn't played a down in a regular season. He got hurt last year, who they drafted that they're hoping it's going to be a big impact player. He's now healthy and back. But outside of that, as you said, Bishop is in there at the slot receiver. I'm not sure they're 100% sold on him. So they need depth in the secondary, and they need a big number 2 receiver. They have all their chips in this Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin basket right now, and I'm not sure that's going to be enough.
No, Jefferson's, like a 3 or a 4 in my opinion, and he's not a bad one. Calvin Austin used to be the camp darling every year. He wasn't even that this year. He didn't do anything spectacular in camp, which maybe, if you're superstitious about that kind of weirdness, sometimes if I'm hitting the ball really well on the range, I'll hit it terribly on the course. Other days when I'm warming up, I don't hit it well. I hit it great on the course. So maybe the Calvin Austin III didn't have that camp year where everyone was talking about him. maybe he will have an impact season. He certainly has the speed. He has the playmaking ability. Uh, Van Jefferson really doesn't. He doesn't have much of anything other than some experience in the NFL. Uh, Pat Fryermuth could be the number two. He is a great red zone player. Russell Wilson's a great red zone quarterback. His last go in Denver was not bad. I mean, what was it, 25 or 22 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, something along those lines. I mean, right now, the Steelers would probably sign up for that. I mean, that's a pretty solid performance in terms of numbers. But, I mean, the defense, once again, is going to be asked to carry this team early. I don't think there's any question about that.
Paul, Mike Tomlin, I know it's one of your favorite subjects. You've been very vocal about that on the podcast in the past. But let's say the Steelers go 9-8 again. They finish above that 500 number once again. Maybe make the playoffs, maybe not make the playoffs. Another success or failure for the Steelers. I'm going to give you my opinion, and I want you to jump in on yours.
Okay.
Steelers have not won a playoff game since 2016. So it's not a matter of them not making. They've made the playoffs a handful of times since then, of course, but have gotten blown out in those first-round wild card
40
games.
40-plus points or more.
It's been ugly. It's been ugly. So, the standard of just making the playoffs not enough, in my opinion. I don't care if they go 9-8. I don't care if they go 10-7. I don't care if they flip the whole script and go 7-10 and somehow make the playoffs with a losing record. If this football team does not win a playoff game in 2024, it is not a successful season.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And one thing you're going to have to, I think, come to grips with if you're a Steeler fan is that Mike Tomlin has a contract for life. As long as he wants to stay, Art Rooney is not going to ask him to go. It's just not going to happen. And no. I mean, the national media, they still they grab onto that, never had a losing season, and they can't get enough of it. And every player in the NFL, their dream in life is to play for Mike Tomlin. That means think about TJ Watt, think about Cam Hayward, think about some of the really good, solid players that they've had here. They haven't won a playoff game in their career as a Steeler. So who wants to play for that? I'd rather go play for Belichick and have him, berate me in front of everybody else and treat me like crap and put a few rings on my fingers. I don't want to be charmed by, and I am charmed. Let me say this about that. When Mike Tomlin's talking, I'm listening because he is one of the great orators of our time. I would like him to run our country. I think he's a far better. I would like him to be the president of the United States right now, considering what we have as choices, rather than be the Steelers head coach. I think he could absolutely run this country. I'm not sure he can win a playoff game for the Steelers. Guys that start out, and you take away the first 5 seasons of Mike Tomlin's career, and you look at the resume, you look at the record, it is really something that would not survive. He is completely living off Super Bowl equity. 1-1, went to 1. How long ago was that? Come on, we're talking ancient history. And even the Penguin coaches that hang on to Sully, you have to understand, it's the early. Bilesma came in, won a Stanley Cup, then won another one. And then they had to get rid of him. And Sully came in and won a cup and then won another one. Don't you see that sometimes you need change? You can't just hang on to the past and think it's going to somehow, again, the true sign of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Every time you extend Mike Tomlin, I think you're further from that next Super Bowl. And again, he'd be hired in a minute. Okay. You mean like Andy Reid? Okay. Go win a Super Bowl somewhere else, Coach T. That would be fantastic. Just to hear him every Tuesday or after the game about why they didn't win is not anything I need in my life. I don't need that, because I'd rather go hear him running our country or doing something really profound. He's not going to win another Super Bowl here. It's not going to happen.
Interesting, to say the least, man. Him running the country, I like that. I'm on board with you, my friend. I think we align.
I'd vote for him tomorrow.
Yes,
let's go.
I agree. And I think he would win the Pennsylvania, or at least the Southwestern Pennsylvania vote in that category, probably. Hey, Paul, we have a little bit left with you. I want to switch gears a little bit off of the NFL. You're a Penn State guy. The Nittany Lions go down to Morgantown last week. They get their first victory of the season. They are 1-0 on the season. Pitt also wins at home. They beat Kent State last weekend as well to start the season off 1-0 as well. Let's talk about the two local teams here in the Pittsburgh area, Penn State and Pitt. Your thoughts so far, or I really should say the upcoming season for both of those teams.
It looks like both teams have a heck of a quarterback. Pitt's guy, Eli, ACC Rookie of the Week, 30 for 40, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, just a pick. And Drew Allard looks like he just grew up. If you want to hear someone talk about a quarterback in glowing terms, Pat McAfee, a West Virginia guy, could not get enough of Drew Allard. I mean, he was just talking about how great this kid was. He stiff-armed a guy. It's one thing to see a running back like Najee does some of the – Najee's stiff arms are friggin' legendary. He had a stiff arm in that game on Saturday in Morgantown that was just unbelievable. I mean, quarterbacks don't normally look like that. He has an NFL arm. It looks like he's making great decisions. I don't think West Virginia's defense is all that. They still have to play Ohio State. But Pitt puts up 55 points. I know Kent State's not exactly they're one of the lower tier MAC teams right now, so that's not anything to get too excited about. But to me, it's a preseason game. The thing that stands out is I think West Virginia is going to be a Big 12 contender. I think they're a legit team. They have a great quarterback and a great running game. I'm not sure about the defense, and they're probably wondering about their defense a little bit right now as well. But Penn State looks legit to me. They look certainly like a top 12, which will get them into the playoffs this year. Ohio State might be the best team in the country, so that might be something to worry about. But you do have them at home. That's going to be a tough ticket in Happy Valley. I know they have 107,000 seats. Good luck getting a ticket for Penn State, Ohio State if they're undefeated going into that one.
Right, absolutely. The Lions right now projecting to be in that top 12, as you mentioned, looking good. And Pitt, trying to put together something. The last couple of years have been, pretty disappointing for Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers. It seems like a lot of these seasons, they start out pretty strong, 3-4 wins. You start thinking this might be it. And then they get into ACC play and they end up finishing the season, maybe a game or two over 500 and another meaningless bowl game, if you will, during the postseason. Paul, finally, let's talk Pittsburgh Pirates. When we had you on the podcast last time, I think we were all very bullish about the Pirates early on in the spring. And I believe they just called up Paul Skeens and we were getting Skeens going for this squad. But things fell apart right after the All-Star break, end of July, beginning of August, especially the month of August. A brutal stretch for the Pirates. And now 2 wins in a row, though, at Chicago. It's like once we give up on them and we say it's over, and it probably is over,
yeah,
and our interest level goes to 0, they still make us want to put the TV on at night and still watch them. They've gone to Chicago and won the last 2. They're going to go for the sweep this evening.
Yeah, it's hard to believe on July 30th, they were 55-52, and we were still bullish. I mean, everybody was still very optimistic. And lesson learned is if the back end of your bullpen is garbage, you're garbage. You just can't win games. That 10-game losing streak that came soon after that July 30th, 55-52 record, 7 of those 10 losses were charged to a bullpen pitcher. That doesn't mean that they blew every one of those games, but they kind of did. Holderman melted down, and sadly, Pittsburgh's own David Bednar just completely melted down. It was good to see him get the last 3 outs of the game. Not a save situation last night, but 3 up, 3 down, which we had not seen a clean inning from David Bednar in forever. It's tough because, you buy in, and when they start winning games and they're in it, they were playing what appeared to be what I look for every year. I want meaningful games in August and September. Even if they fall a little short, if they're playing games that matter and they're right in that wild card hunt, I'm all in. It's a small market team. They don't spend a lot of money. If you get that out of this franchise, that's a victory. Like 13, 14, and 15 were. Those were amazing seasons that we all loved. I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, it's been 1979, the last World Series that we've tasted here. And A lot of you folks watching probably aren't even old enough. I mean, I loved every second of it. I love the 71 World Series, so that's how old I am. But it's just frustrating. It really is. And, you look at the Dodgers, they 18 straight playoff appearances, and they have the number 3 minor league system in all of baseball. Pirates are number 20. What are you doing? I mean, you take it, you break it down to the studs. I mean, you basically do this complete rebuild. And you know what? I was okay with it because you know what? Sometimes you got to bite the bullet and start over and build it up. Okay, you got Paul Skeens. Jared Jones kind of came out of nowhere. What else do you have? Where are the power bats? Where's a first baseman? Key Brian Hayes. Who are you? I mean, seriously, like you're going to hit what's your OPS, like somewhere in the 600s, 500s? I just don't get. They gave him $77 million. I mean, it's not a big contract for a great third baseman, but for a guy that hits 7 home runs, they're not going to be able to unload that contract. And it doesn't look like he's going to live up to that contract. So it seems like every year we're almost starting over. And if they don't strike while Paul Skeens is here, remember Garrett Cole? He was here for 4 seasons. And they struck. I mean, the Pirates made something happen while he was here. They're not going to pay him. They're not going to pay Skeens, Ohtani money to stay. They're not. They can't afford it. So if they don't get something going in the next 4 years, it's a waste. And it's depressing. We're really, we have Sid coming down. Like, how much longer is he's going to stay? When's that contract extension announced? I mean, I don't see the next championship for any of our teams anytime soon. And that's really sad.
Paul, do you think we've seen the last of Derek Shelton and possibly Ben Cherington as well after this season?
That loss, and I was actually doing the post-game show for that. The record in Major League Baseball the last 7 years, if you have a lead of 7 runs or more going into the 7th inning, prior to that loss the Pirates suffered the other day, the record was 1,192 that those teams won. Now it's 1,192-1 because the Pirates found a way to blow a 7-run lead. And they lose 14-10. I mean, it wasn't like right. 11-10. It was 14-10. So to me, if you don't fire someone actually after that game, if he's not going to be your future as it is, which I don't know if Derek Shelton's a manager or not. I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot to work with. But the guy that, if Cherington was given a budget that would allow him to do better than he did the last 3 off seasons and free agency and everything else, he's the problem. They haven't drafted and developed while he was here. The minor league system is 20th in baseball. He had 5 years to build that up. And that's what I thought he was in the process of doing. He was just grabbing talent, grabbing pitchers, grabbing people. Nothing seemed to stick. I don't see any traction there. So I don't know. They say that Bob Nutting won't pay somebody not to work. So those guys have contracts. We don't even know what the Shelton extension was. Why is that shrouded in such secrecy? And it's never leaked. It's never even, how does that stay a secret? How does some, I don't work nearly as intensely as I used to try to find stuff out that people don't know. If I was on the Pirate beat, I would find someone within that organization that would tell me exactly what that extension was. I'm sorry, that needs to be public. We need to know what we're dealing with here. I mean, if it's another 3 or 4 years, then Shelton's probably safe. If this was the last year of the extension, he's probably not. But we don't know.
It's interesting managing in baseball. I was watching Jim Leland with Barry Bonds during an interview a couple weekends ago when they were inducted into the Pirates Hall of Fame. And, Leland said, look, I'm not a great manager. I don't have to do much. The players are the ones that won and they're the ones that lost. I just kind of managed it, if you will, kept the pieces together. But he goes, hey, look, you give me a Barry Bonds or a Bobby Bonilla or a Doug Drabeck. He goes, what else was I supposed to do? And, I look at Derek Shelton with that. And I kind of agree with you, Paul, as well. I think it's more of a front office issue by not bringing in the proper talent outside of a Paul Skeens and maybe a couple other players. I think it's more of a management back office type situation where they just haven't gotten the horses in here. And now, they might have to blow it up again in this offseason and start all over again. And you're right, the window for Paul Skeens is small. We all know that he's not going to be re-signed. The only good news is I believe they do have him for 6 total years with arbitrations and other things. So that would be 5 more seasons after this.
Now,
but
if he wins Rookie of the Year, which he should, I think they lose a year of that.
So they'd be down to 4, as you said.
Well, they'd be at 5, but they didn't keep Garrett Cole for they had him for 2 more years, and they still dealt him sooner rather than later, I guess, hoping that the value would be higher at that point. But it's been horribly mismanaged, and it's sad to me that when you see, a lot of the guys that leave Pittsburgh, they flourish elsewhere. I'm not thinking that's an accident.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We can go on a whole list of ex-Buccos that have found success elsewhere. That's for sure. Hey, Paul, thanks for coming on the podcast. I was just thinking, you're our first triple guest. The
Wow.
third time we've had a handful of guys on. Twice. We've had Ray Fittipaldo on a couple times, Mark Cabali, a couple other guys. But Paul Alexander is now in the record books on the Three Rivers podcast. You are a
three-peat.
A three-peat, 3-time guest here with us. As always, my friend, thank you for coming on. And we're going to go for a 4-peat later this fall.
Anytime you need me, my friend. Thanks, Ed.
That's Paul Alexander from KDKA Radio, the Fan 93.7 FM. You can catch him on all the Odyssey channels here in the Pittsburgh area. And we always appreciate Paul coming on the program. Hey, a programming note, this Sunday – after the Steeler game, Brian and I will be on for the Steeler postgame show live here on Facebook and our YouTube channel as well. We'll take your comments here as we always do. Actually, last year got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, a lot of people fired up whether they win or lose here in Pittsburgh. Paul, we'd love to have you on that postgame show. I don't know what your Sundays look like. We'll talk offline, but we always like to bring on a guest to talk about the game. So maybe we'll get you on the Steeler postgame show with us.
That would be a lot of fun.
So that's going to do it for our Three Rivers podcast for Wednesday, September 4th. Glad you could join us here on our One Berg Facebook channel, One Berg YouTube, and on Spotify. We will see you this Sunday right here on One Berg after the Steelers, and we'll see you next Wednesday here on the Three Rivers podcast for another episode. Have a great day, everyone.